There's a jar on a shelf in a farmhouse pantry. Inside it, seeds that are older than the person who planted this year's garden. Not decorative, not dead, alive. Drop them in soil and they still wake up, still push green through the dirt, still feed a family. That is not a legend. That is measured, documented, repeatable science, and almost nobody in the modern world knows how to do it anymore. For most of human history, every household that grew food also stored its own seed. The seed you saved this autumn was the garden you ate next summer. You did not buy it, you did not reorder it, you did not depend on anyone for it. Traditional growing communities kept that skill alive long after the rest of us forgot it. Plain living farmers who never signed up for a seed subscription in their lives. They stored seed in a way that let it stay alive for years, sometimes decades. And the method they used lines up almost perfectly with what modern seed banks discovered later. By the way, if you would rather not lose this to the algorithm, the full storage method is in the first link below. Anyway, let me show you why most saved seed dies within a single year. Here's the thing almost everyone gets wrong. They save seed from their best tomato, drop it in an envelope, toss it in a kitchen drawer, and hope. 12 months later, almost nothing sprouts. So they blame the seed, blame themselves, and go back to buying new packets every spring. But the seed did not fail them. Their storage did. Because two invisible forces decide whether a seed lives or dies in storage: moisture and temperature. Get those two wrong, and even perfect seed rots quietly in the dark. Get those two right, an ordinary garden seed can outlive the gardener. Before I go on, I need to stop for 2 minutes, because I put the complete method together for the people who want it in one place. Members report that the difference between seed that dies and seed that lasts came down to 3 specific things they had been getting wrong. The first is what I call the cold, dry dormancy method. It is the exact moisture and temperature target that puts a seed into deep, safe sleep. Too wet, and the seed breathes itself to death or grows mold. Too dry, and certain seeds crack and die from the inside. There's a narrow, precise window that keeps a seed alive the longest, and it is measurable. The second is the silica-desiccant ratio. How to pull a seed down to that exact moisture level and hold it there, using a cheap drying agent from any craft store in the right proportion to the seed without any lab gear at all. The third is the open-pollinated regrowth cycle. Because none of this matters if you saved the wrong kind of seed to begin with. Hybrid seed, the kind in most store packets, does not breed true. Its children are a genetic gamble. Open-pollinated and heirloom varieties breed true season after season, so the seed you save actually becomes next year's garden. Knowing which varieties do this and how to keep the line pure is the difference between a single harvest and a garden that renews itself forever. Those 3 together are the whole method: the cold, dry dormancy method, the silica-desiccant ratio, and the open-pollinated regrowth cycle. I could not fit the exact numbers and ratios into this video without it running an hour long. So the complete protocol with the precise targets is inside the Sovereign Garden Code, linked first in the description, for less than the cost of a single tray of nursery seedlings. Individual results vary, and members report their seed lasting far longer once they fixed these 3 things. 90-day money-back guarantee. If it does not work for you, you keep nothing but your time lost. All right, back to the garden. Let me stop here for a moment, because this is the part that actually matters. Researchers have stored seeds under controlled conditions for decades and simply watched. At the United States National Seed Laboratory, vegetable seed was kept for up to 60 years. The first decades, seeds sat in paper envelopes and metal trays, cool and dry. Later, they were dried down and sealed in moisture-proof bags in deep cold. Seeds harvested back in the 1930s were still germinating 50 years on. In a separate study, researchers tracked seeds across storage temperatures from below freezing up to warm room heat. The pattern was brutal and clear. Pine seed stored near room temperature at about 77 degrees lost every bit of its life. The very same seed, stored below freezing, still germinated at nearly 90% after 20 years. Same seed, same start, wildly different endings. The only thing that changed was how it was stored. And when scientists modeled the numbers, the projections became almost unbelievable. Under proper cold, dry conditions, some seeds are predicted to stay viable not for years, but for centuries. Crimson clover, in one model, projected past 5,000 years in deep cold. That is not a promise for your pantry, that is a laboratory ceiling. But it tells you something enormous. The seed is not the limitation. The storage is. So what did the traditional growers understand without a single laboratory? They understood cold and they understood dry. 2 things a farmhouse always had within reach. Let me show you what these principles look like in a real pantry, not a laboratory. Start with drying, because moisture is the faster killer. A seed that feels dry to your fingers is often still far too wet to store. Traditional growers spread seed on cloth or paper out of the sun and moving air for days. The goal was a seed that snaps rather than bends, a bean that shatters instead of denting. That snap is the sound of a seed dry enough to sleep. Then came the sealing. Once dry, seed was put into something that kept new moisture out. Glass jars with tight lids, sealed tins, anything the damp could not creep back into. And here's a quiet trick the old growers used without knowing the chemistry. They tucked a scrap of dry material in with the seed to pull the last dampness out of the air inside. Modern gardeners do the same thing with a small drying packet. The principle is identical across 400 years. Keep the air around the seed dry. Then came the cold. A root cellar, a cold north pantry, the coolest, most stable corner of the house. Every degree cooler slowed the seed's inner clock. Warmth speeds a seed toward death. Cold nearly stops the clock. Modern seed banks simply took this to the extreme, with deep freezers instead of cellars, but the direction is the same one a farmhouse pantry pointed in 3 centuries ago. Cool, dark, dry, sealed, stable. 5 plain words that decide whether your seed lives 1 year or 30. Now think about what that actually gives back to a household. A packet of seed today costs a few dollars and lasts 1 season if you're lucky. Seed you save and store correctly costs nothing and can carry your garden for years. More than the money, it is the independence. The garden stops being something you repurchase every spring. It becomes something you keep, something you pass down. The same jar, refilled each autumn, feeding the same family across decades. That is what those farmhouse pantries really held. Not just seed, continuity. And the science we have now does not contradict that old wisdom. It confirms it, measures it, and explains exactly why it worked. Cold slows the clock. Dryness stops the rot. True breeding seed renews the line. That is the whole quiet miracle sitting in that farmhouse jar. If you want the exact moisture targets, the drying ratios, and the variety list in one place, it is in the first link. Before you go, one honest thought. This knowledge was never secret. It was just forgotten 1 generation at a time. Every household that relearns it takes 1 more garden off the yearly repurchase treadmill. If you want more of the old growing knowledge, brought back and checked against real science, subscribe to this channel so it does not get forgotten again.